We're live. Great. Welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, April 11th. I hope everyone had were well fed over Seder and Easter weekends and Ramadan. What a feast of food. We are here this morning to begin the work of addressing the House Workforce Development Bill, which is H-484, which got folded into the budget and was passed in its entirety, I believe, in the budget to the Senate. We're extracting it again, and we're going to be addressing all the elements of workforce development in this committee, and we have a lot of people to hear from over the next couple of weeks. But we're going to start with our fabulous anchor witnesses, our own staff, our council, and our financial whizzes. So we're going to begin with David Hall walking us through the bill, and we are then going to turn to Sarah, and we're going to go through the finances of it, the joint fiscal note, which is done by Patrick and Julia. Okay, but Sarah's got all the money pieces all pulled out. We have a big chart. So David, if you'd be kind enough to start us, that would be great. Sure. And I'll just remind everybody that, as we know, workforce development is one of our top priorities of the year. So we're thrilled to finally get this.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm back.
It's good to see you.
Glad you came back.
Yeah.
We're thrilled.
Not housing this time. I assume David Haller, City Council. I assume all those many documents that you printed off are posted on your webpage.
Yes.
To get you into it through it most expedient fashion, maybe the table that I supplied to you would be easiest, just because it's summary. It's actually not that one, it's that one.
Okay, we have that too.
This one? No, that's Sarah's. We're going to go through that with Sarah. In your packet is a little tiny.
Here it is.
It's right there. Okay.
All right.
Great.
Here's why. So it's a little bit wonky, the procedural life that this language has had. It began as H-484, a House workforce bill, right? That was voted out of Commerce, so as they are wont to do, they farmed out subject-specific work to other committees of jurisdiction for proposals, which they basically just took in whole cloth and put into their bill. Then it went to Ways and Means made changes, went to Appropriations made more changes. Commerce packaged all of that stuff together in a bill, which it's framed as an amendment, but what really happened in the end was
this.
Right. That was approved by all the constituent committees and then integrated into the budget. So this bill doesn't even actually exist except as a shell on the wall still in Commerce. And the language is in the budget bill.
Right.
And it's not the same. It's mostly the same. It's 98% the same, but it also got pulled apart in a lot of different ways.
Thank you. And that is a great introduction to its journey. Mm-hmm. And may I just pivot, because we have a vice chair of House Commerce who just walked in the room to give us sort of an overview of what they accomplished, the key things they hit, and addressed rather. And then we can pivot back to you, David. Absolutely. Is that okay?
Yep.
Representative Stephanie Jerome, we welcome you to Senate Economic Development.
See you. See everybody.
It's great to see you. If you would be kind enough to give us, tee it up for us. David and Sarah and Patrick are then going to take it away.
Okay.
But if you would be kind enough to give us the big picture of what you were accomplishing, some of the areas, what you're most excited about, and some of the areas that you want us to pay keen attention to. Whatever your top priorities are that you want to share with us, go for it.
Okay, so and Mike will be joining us as well. So in a second. Well. So this is working off of all of the workforce development progress that we made in Act 183, and it's sort of taking it to just moving forward on addressing the workforce issues for the state of Vermont. It is, we spent over $40 million in this bill. And I would say, if I was to look at I think there are sectors of our state that we all know are an issue. And one of the new sectors that we addressed in this bill was the teacher workforce. And there was three programs that we developed. Mike, do you want to join?
Yeah, pull up a chair, Chair Markov.
We're just talking about the highlights of the workforce bill, and starting with the teacher workforce. So that was a big piece, and you'll see a continuing theme of forgivable loans throughout the entire bill as well.
So now that Mike's joined us, why don't you both introduce yourselves to the record?
Certainly, go ahead.
Sure. I'm Mike Marcotte. I'm state representative from Coventry, chair of House Commerce and Economic Development.
Stephanie Zach Jerome, I'm vice chair of commerce, and I represent Brandon.
Great.
So the teacher workforce, this teacher forgivable loans, $2.5 million. There's a new program called Emerging Pathway Grants, which is we're sort of billing as a build your own. We saw this in the healthcare, what we did in healthcare last year. People who are already working within that sector, perhaps para educators who want to become teachers, helping them get those degrees, their qualifications,
or upskilling,
or perhaps other people in the sector becoming para. So that's the trajectory. And then we have an educator workforce diversity program. It's new. It's a small amount of money. It's $30,000 to sort of mentor historically underrepresented groups of folks who are teachers throughout the state.
Just to, I don't know, Stephanie, just for context, that these pieces that don't directly, we've worked with like house education, house human services, and healthcare in developing, as we did last year, in developing some of these. So they have more intricate knowledge of what their proposal is. Here we had Representative Mulvaney Stanek work with house education coming up with these programs, but most of that work was done in most communities in conjunction with us.
Thank you. David had mentioned that you did what you did last year with S11/Act 183. You farmed out to the committees of jurisdiction.
Yeah, so we work cooperatively with them. So a person from our committee was assigned to work very closely with that committee. And I think it's worked really well. And we're really proud of the fact that we work across committees and to make this a sort of a unified bill and help everybody at the same time. And continuing on with some of our other work we did last year, we worked in corrections. But this particular piece in corrections is $500,000 to help those existing corrections workers who have not recently gone through the academy. So they haven't received the new training. So that would facilitate developing a better workforce culture within the system. And so this is focusing on employees who have been working for the department for a number of years.
There's federal dollars that Department of Corrections received. I think they hired a consultant that's only good until I think October, November. This would help extend that time frame to make sure that we're getting all of the people that we're trying to affect, all the legacy workers that are there now, get them trained up so everybody's on the same playing field as what they're training the new members of DOC.
This is critical work. I mean, this is one of the biggest, I mean, as we all know, corrections has some of the biggest retention challenges in the state government.
Very difficult.
And they have long, beginning with Jim Baker, we have long been wanting to really address the culture in DOC. And it sounds like they've been working on it for a while with this new federal grant. So this will extend it. And how long would it extend it for?
I don't know.
I'm not sure about the date.
Matt, is it okay to, I don't know what our timing is. Do you get a sense that this training is effective?
That's our understanding is, I mean, and again, we worked with institutes, corrections and institutions on this piece, and so this is their recommendation.
Okay.
We did have Representative Granning work with them in developing this language that's in there.
Great, and we can get the OCN and or Michelle Boslin, who I think maybe did this work in correction.
Yes,
Great, terrific. What?
so I guess just say that we
Yeah,
need, we need to try.
No, that's
yeah,
an answer. Yeah,
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 okay.
thank
So the next piece is sort of, training adult workers. So it's Vermont Serve, Learn and Earn. You may remember that from last year as well. So that's a cooperative program with Audubon Vermont, Resource Vermont, Vermont Works for Women, and Vermont Youth Conservation Corps. And they are training paid learning skill opportunities
For adult
for
workers.
adult workers. And then very successful, and we were impressed by the number of participants that they had and the people that they moved through that program last year.
Okay.
And I went to their presentation here. They did a big one at the Granite Museum. How, you go through the program, how many of those people are employed a year after the program? Do we know that?
We can get to that. I know we can get you that. I
Okay,
know
well,
there's-
we can get it, but I
Okay,
mean,
yeah,
just to go through a program, the goal is to end up. employed.
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. That is absolutely.
We are having
Right.
them, that we're having Brett come in and,
Yeah,
Great.
one thing that we mentioned to them last year was the need to provide us with data.
Yeah, we-
They were.
And they
had
did.
good
Both
data
of us,
collection, and
yeah.
Now they are collecting that data.
Yeah.
Okay,
because this is a significant piece of this bill, 2.4 million.
Yeah,
So
it's a large portion, right?
so, great.
The next portion is adult education and literacy. Improving someone's literacy obviously gets, it greatly improves someone's chance of getting a better job or so. This organization had been not funded for level funded for a number of years.
now
So-
I think they told it.
So this is 1.5 million to expand their
That is
program.
helping the refugees.
Yes.
Absolutely, right. And there was actually had a really good story about that, Mike, but heard some direct work.
Oh, yeah, we had Michelle Faust from Northeast Kingdom Adult Learning Services. She was in testifying, and we were talking about the refugee. We have a group of refugees in Derby now, where she was unaware. We put her in contact with Tracy Dole.
Oh, great.
And they now, there was one family of refugees that was able to access the funding to work with them. So we got them connected. So that's a good thing. The other piece is that now that corrections is changing their direction, closing down the DCI, closing down the print shops and going more into looking at the areas and skilling people that are incarcerated in skills that will help them when they get out, certification programs or things. Adult Learning Services will be integral in getting those people the skills that they need while they're in and while they get out. So the money is very much needed.
And it's unclear, and this is a note for Patrick and Sarah about whether this got included in the budget. It's not clear, so
It's in days.
it is, because, okay, there's a question mark in our chart here, so we'll do, great,
Okay.
terrific.
Just a little question. So are the adult literacy folks or adult learning planning to work with corrections? Is that
They
their
do
intent?
now,
They, okay, because, all right,
and they will more.
all right. Yeah, I just met with the person down in Brattleboro and they are doing great work with the refugees.
Right.
Really important.
Mhm.
The state needs to support that.
Terrific. So now we
Yep.
go to climate workforce.
Right, so this is in the budget, I think that this became $100,000 in general fund it's basically a campaign to raise awareness of the opportunities in working in this sector and getting educated in the sector. And then there's the next piece is the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and that is coaching and helping businesses that are in the energy sector to pivot to renewable energy and efficiency and new efficient technologies. And
Okay.
that's building on an existing program within the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, the business coaching program.
Okay, and that is in
It's
a,
$180,000 and it's, they'll be spending that money over the course of 3 years.
okay, that may, as David walks us through, we're gonna connect the pieces because that doesn't necessarily fall out here, so that's fine.
Then there are a number of programs that are within the Vermont State College system and UVM. So Vermont State College is starting a new restorative justice Bachelor of Science program. That's $700,000. And that dovetails nicely with the Vermont Law School.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's-
program.
That's lovely. Yeah,
Another kind of really exciting program is a certificate in 3D technology, which is for high school students and recent grads. It's a 6-week residential program at VTC in Randolph and at Castleton to prepare them for this new technology in the
It's a
state.
summer program.
Summer program, yeah.
and that's a separate, that also is a high investment
Mhm.
That's
bar.
that's a 2-year program.
And I assume we're gonna, that Pat Moulton is the person that we want to talk to about all the VTs, the VSU projects. Right,
Yeah.
I think that's who I put
Yeah.
after our conversation.
Yeah, and Catherine. Critical occupation scholarship. These were done in the bill last year, and this is a continuation. And what we've done, although maybe not necessarily, but we, because so many things can be deemed as critical occupations, included in the list, we wanted to include, we included early childcare, clinical mental health counseling, criminal justice, dental hygiene, and nursing. And so just to call out the need for dental hygiene as a critical workforce.
And criminal justice.
In criminal justice, yeah.
Yeah, we got them here.
Okay. Upskilling Vermont, that's also a continuation of a program that we had at University of Vermont where it's additional certifications. And that was highly successful over the past 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. And so that's funding more certifications.
Another big, yeah, and that is that's sort of like adult ed.
It
right?
is,
I mean,
yeah.
it's adult ed who are choosing to access straight to UVM.
Through the course of through the certification programs that they offer at UVM, right?
But not through adult ed, as it were.
This is at UVM. In the past 2 years, I think it's great statistics on, I mean, the offerings were taken up and filled within days.
Oh, good, that's what
So
I was
this
wondering.
is, there was nothing left within a very, very short amount of time.
And, okay, well, we can ask, and was this done with VY? Okay. we've got
Wendy
the-
Koenig, you probably talked to Wendy Koenig here. This is probably the best one.
Yeah.
Or if she.
Right, I think
case-
you and I have identified her for, yeah.
So then we have a Vermont Trade Scholarships at $1 million, administered through VSAC, very successful. Vermont Training Program, that one is $5 million of Vermont training funds so that it is our matching money so that Vermont can get the $250 to $500 million range, which we don't know yet how much it is from the CHIPS Act that will be going to
Got it.
state. So that's an important piece of that larger.
And the match is 1-to-1.
So the caveat to that is we don't know. This is
Unclear on the match.
very unclear
So
until
Sarah is agreeing.
we
Okay.
get all of the information back from the Fed. on
But there is some match
So this-
possibility.
Yes, this would help with that. It may
So-
not be the full amount that we need to appropriate.
So on faith, we appropriate, sort of like universal
Well,
meals.
But it's actually helping create on campus or near campus 3D technologies, all of the advanced manufacturing that
Yep,
that is not just open to like global, but there's another chip manufacturer, but it's also open to all students. So it's not just, monies that are just aiding them. It's going to actually aid the people that are going to take it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, right.
And so it sounds like it's something we would want to do even if it wasn't federal money.
Correct.
Okay.
But the federal money's,
So it's got.
Oh, yeah, no, that obviously helps.
It's got many
Yeah.
purposes.
it's a good return, yeah. It's a good return.
Okay.
So Peninsula Value is, we're continuing the program of Advanced Vermont, and we've heard from multiple anecdotal stories and I heard from so many people that this resource of Advanced Vermont is so helpful to educators throughout the state.
And just to remind Randy and Keisha, this is the Tom Cheney.
Tom Cheney.
Yeah.
Yes.
Keisha's right there. She
Oh, yeah.
can see right here.
Okay, so, there we go. Okay,
But also.
What is, I'm not sure what,
okay,
This is a,
I'm totally lost.
oh, sorry.
okay, so we're right here with credential
Yeah,
of value.
You just said for Randy.
Oh,
it's
just
the
to
Tom
remind him.
Cheney. I have no idea.
Well,
what
we
that
will
is.
I
have
don't know
Tom in,
either, so yeah.
but you could,
Ah.
if you'd be kind enough just to give a snapshot of it,
Sure.
Stephanie.
So it is administered through VSAC, so the funds go through VSAC. Tom Cheney has developed a program, a website, which shows all of the credentials of value,
Okay.
pathways.
In the
I know
occupations
VSAC
you-
board, this I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Okay,
In the occupations you might be interested in. So if you say, oh, I might like to be a hairdresser, well, here are all the things that you would have to do to become a hairdresser in Vermont. And how can we help you get through those?
okay.
So it's like a portal
It is
into,
exactly, it's a
very successful portal into, as you're thinking about things, what you have to do to accomplish and achieve.
So we
Okay,
have a goal of 70% of people having achieved a certificate or a degree by 2025. So we don't have much time. We're getting there, but we may fall short, but we need to still try and strive for
so we are tracking who gets the certificate, and then I want to know, are they working, and are they working in Vermont?
Right.
Two different questions.
Good.
well, a lot of these, good to know is that a lot of these forgivable loans are just that, like,
Right,
so
well, there's a
Getting
work
them to stay-
requirement on it.
there needs to stay in Vermont, so.
I'm just wondering about all the training we're paying for. Are we training people to move to New Hampshire or New York or California?
Right. No, they have some residency requirements, some of them
Okay,
for
and
certain periods of
I
time.
just-
And so, actually, I would-
it. The Department of Labor is working. They've been working for years on developing a similar system through the workforce development area. They still haven't gone to bid yet, I think, or they're gone out to bid. This money and this project, once the Department of Labor has stood up, their portion can now import all of this information that Advanced Vermont is doing.
Right.
So it's not wasted dollars by any means.
No, it's all right. Okay.
okay.
Let us, because we're
So-
keeping you from your committee.
Okay, and so then, United Way of Lamoille County has a program for working bridges, and that is, it's a little over $250,000 to help employees and employers connect with resources to sort of keep their employee workforce stable and assist that whole workforce.
Franklin United Way already has this program up and running. Their goal is to get the other 3 United Ways throughout the state up and running on the same. So this is the first step, Franklin. Next year, they'll come back and ask to set up one of the other ones, and then the following year, those are in the south of the state, southern part of the state. And so once they have stood these up, they don't anticipate any more state.
Good.
any
So we
more
get,
needs
this
from
is sort of
the state.
startup money.
Correct.
Mhm.
We should get a percent of the action.
What is resource coordination for employee stability? What does that mean?
You know what I think it means, is what it means. So if you have an employee that needs better literacy skills, you would then help that person get connected with that skill they might need. Or if someone needs additional supports in childcare, like it's sort of addressing how to access all of the programs that are out there to assist your employee. And they're helping businesses do that.
Elizabeth Launch is one of the.
Right.
Also, person from Memorial.
And as we know, like business owners don't always have the time to devote but they want to keep their employees, right? So this organization is helping employers and employees.
And smaller ones
Connected
don't have
resources.
HR. The smaller businesses don't necessarily have an HR, and this is sort of stepping in and filling some of that.
That's how I see it, and it's been very successful.
Overall, throughout all the various things that we're talking about, is there any focus in the bill or elsewhere to say, is there someone who is monitoring what the accomplishments are versus the cost benefit analysis overall, and whether or not what we're doing is working?
That goes to our other study that we asked for, that I'm doing with the governance, where we would have one office that actually does all that. Because I think that is one of our challenges. How do we measure success?
And these are diverse amongst many agencies in different programs.
But overall, I mean,
So, but that is when we give an update on on that work that we're doing. Remember, we had proposed that last year, and we're doing that task force now to review what kind of a governance structure workforce development needs, and the CTE report, which we're going to get an update on in this committee, is a piece of it. But the other piece was the governor asked to have a study instead of implementing a oversight office, for us to study it first. We gave them $250,000 to do that work of figuring out exactly this. How are we going to create a one-stop shop where we know that ties all these disparate parts of workforce development into one office and gives us those results?
Last January?
Yes, here's our chair, and we are serving on it together.
We got to a point where there was no way we could get it done by January. So we've worked with the consultant that we hired. So we'll have a final report in September, and then we'll bring it back to this committee, my committee.
But this is exactly, your question, Randy, is exactly what it's very hard to do unless you have one set of eyes evaluating it all and saying, this is what we are getting this is the bang we're getting for that. And so Mike and I are working on that, and we should have an update for everybody in a couple of weeks. That would be good. Yeah, well, we could give an update to both committees.
Update will be.
Yeah.
So a
Okay.
few more programs.
Because I know you need to get back up.
Psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners, we allocated $1 million for forgivable loans for that as well, so that there are programs at Norwich, UMass, and UNH. Wanting to make sure that we train as many nurses in this field as possible and as quickly as possible. We felt like they could go to any of the local programs, and many of them are online, but with a commitment to work in state once they receive those funds. The nursing forgivable loan program uses global commitment funds, so it's less than the $3 million. It's $1.3 million is what we have to allocate for that. So same idea, forgivable loans, working in state.
That's on page 7 if we're following along on this sort of spreadsheet.
I'm looking at what she's looking
Okay,
at.
all right.
Oh, is that from?
Yeah.
Is that
It's
from?
the JFO thing.
Yep,
That's our JFO.
okay.
Okay, either way, it doesn't matter. They're both in the same
And then we're
spot.
continuing on, this is from last year, this healthcare workforce position, that again, for this year, there's a big ticket item of $4 million to the designated agencies for forgivable loans and tuition assistance for people who work in the designated agencies that have bachelor's and master's and are carrying debt. So that was an expansion of a program that we had last year, and there was a desire in order to,
Right.
maintain a benefit, keep workers.
This isn't gonna help if all the agencies can afford to pay a master's level person is $35,000 a year.
Certainly correct.
So this is for existing employees.
I
Yeah, I'm
wanna see
sorry.
what the budget is doing.
Existing
Yeah.
employees, yeah, existing employees. And then the small business technical assistance, that's 1.25 million to the RDCs, that they would manage this program. And it's building off of the pandemic era program where we were assisting very small businesses.
Yep.
Not typical of the RDCs, were often larger businesses, but this was things like helping them with QuickBooks or human resources or websites or marketing, and that sort of small business assistance. And that was a very, very successful program, and it felt like it would be good to continue. I agree.
It is continuing in another aspect, which Sanders financed, which the law school and the small business,
For the hub and spoke system.
yes,
Yeah.
Nicole Killerman or something.
Yeah, we heard.
And so we're going to hear from her also it's slightly separate because they're not here, but they are, and they are not asking for anything. They just
No,
want to
that's
update us on what they're
specific to providing legal information.
Yeah, Oliver, that's Oliver, which is fun.
The National Endowment for the Arts, that's $72,000 from Vermont Arts Council for their match for the NEA and the creative, really, that's sort of, the thread is their creative
Economy work.
creative economy work that they've been doing. So that's why we decided that it should go best in this bill. And then last is the Rural Industry Development Fund. And that is $5 million to assist. We could go through the RDCs to assist in permitting and prepping commercial properties for development or for to rent for, so as an aside on this one, we have heard, you may have heard too, that there's a large number of Canadian companies that want to come into Vermont, and they are looking for existing buildings and property that they can really, in order to, a lot of interest to having a foothold in the state.
So is that what we're calling the Rural Industry Development Grant Program?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's new.
Well,
right?
it's just
You said
a
it
sort of
creates
inside,
it.
it's new, it was,
It's actually dovetailing off of an old thing, which was sort of piloted by Joan Goldstein, when she was the executive director of the Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation, and she began to develop, and well, she may not have spirit, but anyway, she did this and bought property for places to come and expand into, and then
It's
it's
creating industrial
great,
parks.
yeah.
Which, Brattleboro was good at it, I think.
But-
Northeast Kingdom.
As I recall, this is really focused on the northern half of Vermont, because the Canadian businesses may not want to come much lower than White River Junction.
I mean, I think that's true, but I guess it's for any other
Yeah.
businesses that might be on.
Yeah. Okay, we can check.
So a couple of the other things that aren't part of the fiscal note is that Better Places program. We expanded that from, it's been a successful program, and it's a crowdfunding grant program for communities to do public acts.
Crowdfunding.
Yeah, and it's
Oh,
crowdfunding.
yeah.
So we did expanded that from 1 to 3 projects per year.
And per town,
per
right?
community. Yep.
And or per community. So question on Better Places, they usually, we have appropriated money for Better Places. Are we not doing that this year?
No, we appropriated, they still have dollars. for it, so.
Okay,
Yeah, we
Great.
just wanted to
Haven't come back,
expand this
but-
opportunity.
good.
I think some of the things like, so fixing language, letting the downtown development community, the boards get a per diem, which I think is just clarifying. But the one thing I also wanted to mention was the Secretary of State Business Portal. And so we have met with
Yes.
the one-stop portal that's been in works for a number of years. It's this sort of universal agreement that this is really needed. And so we put some language in here to sort of, let's say, document that it needs to get done.
Yeah, the Secretary of State was kind of the,
Yes, they
Head
were
of
our
the-
partners, Chris Winters, when we first put this, set this up.
but the Secretary of State now doesn't want to be the convener. So we've changed that, put that into the administration. I think it's ADS will be.
Oh, so we should get Sean in,
Yeah.
And,
Sean,
and Sarah
And
as
Sarah,
well.
yeah.
or Laura, somebody who's been involved with it.
Those
Well, whoever Sarah wants to say.
Okay.
are-
But we heard from Sarah as well, just Sean.
Is this the simplifying government?
Mhm.
office?
That's
But
the,
it's to get it back on track again.
okay, yes,
idea.
we need to, we invested a lot, Wendy, and this was getting, what we do not have is a one-stop portal for businesses coming in and, you know, this is my business, this is what, if you want to set up a business, this is what you need to do. We set this up 5 years ago, at least, 6 years ago, maybe, and so
Talking
I,
about that, my last passed through
The
here.
PhD.
well, we did it, we enacted it, I think, in 17.
I think the last thing that we should speak about is the, it's section
The
45.
brownfields you
45.
didn't talk
Oh,
about, which is
I'm sorry.
critically important, but you
Ten-
did, it's okay, we
Yeah,
understand,
brownfields is
8 million.
The ask was 10.
10, yeah.
I
and
think
then-
in the House budget, we appropriated 8 million, but the other 2 million is in the waterfall.
Oh, you mean already was in the BAA?
No, it's in,
If it comes in.
if there's a, if the waterfall, there's dollars at the end of the year, then they would appropriate another 2 million to the brownfields.
Okay.
And we running the program the same way as we did in BAA. So $1 million is gonna go to the RPCs. They got the 10%, same thing.
Great.
9 million will go out.
Good, and so any questions for our bill
Just
report?
one last
Yeah.
thing, we want to talk about this COVID related paid leave grant program
Oh,
that was in.
Appreciate it.
And
That we
also
created.
the CRAP, I don't know what we're calling the CRAP, the Community Resilience and Revitalization grants, and I see you have it in here,
There's one
so,
change to add
Municipal water.
municipal water. There are municipalities that have water,
okay,
wastewater system that municipalities or the district doesn't own. They're privately owned, but this would bring them
Small
the
language
availability to get those grants as well.
and there's no money
So
attached.
where's that?
That's on the last page, it's on page 9 of 10 here. And it is not, because there's no money attached, it's not
Yeah, it's
in
not in this
the,
one,
in
no.
the JFO piece. So it's here on page 9 in this J.
Okay, so
David's
this is the
chart.
community recovery and revitalization.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing is that this COVID relief funds, DFR was administering it, and maybe you want to go through the details.
And they
of
had
that.
many technical difficulties in standing that program up.
Yes, DFR sort of, that was a,
So,
too bad.
there was 5 million that I think they'll be able to get out, and I think they're getting ready to get that out. Still 10 million left in there. That 10 million was, what do they call this one?
American Rescue Plan Act.
Yeah.
Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars.
But the 10 million, I think the administration has changed those dollars to
Oh,
We're gonna
revenue
claw them
revenue
back.
loss,
That's
revenue
it.
loss dollars,
Oh,
which
yeah.
affords not having to follow all of the,
It's free money, basically. It's
pretty
like
much.
revenue
So,
sharing.
It's the 5
The 5
million
million is-
remains with financial
right,
regulation.
that's it. So it's a 5 million. It assists them in getting that money out quicker. We took the other 10 million and appropriations deployed that in other areas.
So Approps has already hijacked that.
Well,
I
it's
think
getting
it
the
was-
money
it
to
was-
work, and there's no way we get that money out
We,
in the time frame.
we could spend it right here.
Well, I mean, pretty much it was a swap out, so there were
Right.
things that appropriations was going to need to cut where they didn't because they had that extra money, so we were able to work with
But
that.
it's a good, that's led us to the next discussion, which I'm sure Sarah's looking into about, what else is left on the table.
Okay, so the one thing you have not mentioned, which is near and dear
Oh.
to two of our hearts. And what might that be, that
Would
you
that-
don't love?
With that, what we don't love.
What don't you
Oh,
love that
what
we
we
love?
Hmm.
Hmm, David has the answer and Randy knows what it
And it's
is.
not in the bill.
And I don't
It's in
have
the
a
bill.
clue.
It's in the
Yeah,
tiny-
I was gonna say which two hearts, but it sounds like you and Randy is who you're talking about.
Well, might it be relocated
We
workers
did relocate.
in your dreams? So new relocating, AKA remote worker and new, you did do something there.
Yeah, They're fix the language, we fixed the language a little bit, and that came from,
Right.
the.
That came from
There was a
Joe.
Yeah.
need- Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she'll be coming in.
Do you, do you want our thoughts on it?
We would love your thoughts.
Well, I think generally the thoughts,
Well, I'm not sure we'd love them, but we
Okay.
are happy to hear.
We'd like to hear.
Our thoughts haven't changed.
I appreciate-
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know what they were.
and so it's,
The
so,
house does not like.
We
Okay.
love it. We
Yeah.
created
And I
it.
think-
They don't like it.
and the thing that was sort of reiterated in our discussion is that during COVID, many people moved to Vermont, and are working here remotely. And, so perhaps that's what was put into place helped, and here we are. So people are working remotely. They know that's it's become a sort of an obviously national movement, and, maybe we don't need to put more money into it because the people are already here working.
Okay.
Well, and it's our feeling also that those dollars should be spent on programs like we have at the University of Vermont, the Office of Engagement.
Oh, I forgot. I completely skipped over that.
We did.
Oh, so sorry.
is of providing graduates with forgivable loans for 2 years, $5,000, which we feel will present much more, would be better spent dollars keeping those graduates here. We can get them to put roots down and helping them, cutting that gap between them leaving and going to a job outside of the state. We cut that
So-
gap down, we keep them here, they put roots down, money much better spent than
Yes.
in our.
And that's, I'm sorry, I skipped that one. This is, it's funding through the Office of Engagement at UVM, but it's for all graduates of Vermont public and private colleges and universities. And so that they would, take their first jobs that require a college degree in Vermont. And what we're hearing is that, employers really like this. It's just starting, basically. It's just getting off the ground now. And the discussion through the Office of Engagement is that some employers are so excited about this that they're matching it.
Which is,
They-
which is
so
great.
Yeah.
And
So
it
it's-
remind me what we're calling it in this bill, because we started this, Wendy and Ann, last year. and
Yeah,
It was part of S11 and this is part of our follow-up.
It is.
Oh, here it is. It's in
Office of
F,
Engagement, but it has
Section
it has a clever new
It's on
name. but
page
yeah,
4. It's
section
Office
12.
of Engagement, forgivable loans for recent college graduates. And it's 2.5 million this year. We had allocated
2.5 last year.
2.5 last year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a, unique
began at
program to
5.
see if we have invested, time and energy into students in Vermont. They've learned to love living, they love Vermont, they like it here. And if there are a certain number of them who would like to stay, and to help them stay here instead of moving back home,
Sure.
then maybe it's,
And how does it get forgiven?
so after they stay working in these companies, it's all documented and there's an office in
So if they stay for X number of years,
2-year program.
2 years.
2 years, so if they
5,000.
stay for 2 years, they get to keep the $2,000.
It goes, it forgives their loan, so
It
they use,
forgives-
the Office of
Yeah.
Engagement is working with VSAC.
VSAC.
Yeah, okay, but the loan,
If they have college loans, if they have debt.
oh, it goes through the college loan.
Well,
Yeah.
they're, yeah,
Okay.
they're debt, right.
That's, I'm
They're-
just, I was trying to figure out what we were loaning the money.
No, we're
for.
not. We're just
Yeah.
forgiving their
And-
already existing
and-
college.
That makes sense.
I want to just give a little plug out to VSAC. VSAC has been tremendously
Yes,
helpful
we're
and
getting-
efficient and has
Thank you.
really done a good job of getting all of these funds out.
I will convey
Good.
that.
Good.
Yes, well,
What
Maryland
we
is
learned
gonna,
to
They're
expect from
terrific.
that.
Yeah,
Right.
they have, and this was a unique, unusual program that they
Yeah.
work cooperatively with UVM Office of Engagement to do this. And we have heard because it's just in March, just started rolling out that there are students from all over the state and mostly not in Chittenden County.
which is
who are
great,
looking
because
for
it's
this.
working with every college and
Mhm.
every,
Mhm.
yeah.
They anticipate 400 students by the end of the year.
Wow.
That's terrific.
Which
That's
is a large
really
number of
good.
people for us, right? It's a large number
Right.
of
That
people to
is.
send.
Again, we need to track how many stay there beyond 2 years.
And the medical
Sure.
students.
And then we have to be willing to pay for that longitudinal study.
Right.
I mean, that's
Well, we can ask EVM to do that. Make sure
Well,
that they're tracking that.
and it's part of what I think we want with this, what the work we're doing for an office of a workforce development center. You know, an office of workforce development, which would do exactly that and track it. But we'd have to finance it. Okay. Anything else
Yeah.
before they go back upstairs?
Just a couple of things. Is that okay? Is that
Yeah.
what I'm gonna see these people?
Yeah, because as
We
long as
call
you
it
guys
whatever
are
you
okay.
want. Okay, well, just on the tracking thing, just an idea, you could also set up like a group with these folks and they could kind of track themselves, because people like to be in social groups.
We can do
online.
that.
But that's just a little, that's all I'm
We'll
gonna say.
discuss that.
Okay, so just a couple big questions and then a little thing. So one overall question is, how does this budget compare to previous years? Is it bigger, smaller, in line, or?
Well, last year was about,
So last year's was bigger, right?
S11.
Because all the ARPA money.
I
That's
think
a
about
lot.
130 million last year.
Yeah, we spent a bomb last year.
And so what's this?
40.
This is
40.
And is this more regular for previous years?
No,
Or
it's
This is
still a
way,
lot.
way, way above
what are normal years?
If we're lucky, might get $2 million
Yeah.
2, and this is 40?
for economic development.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow.
This-
Okay, that's good for me to know. Okay.
This is still a substantial ask, as Jane has said to me. politely.
Sure. And now I understand that. So, another kind of, I think it's a big question. Transportation is often a barrier to, people getting to work, people, you know, so, and in Brattleboro, the BDCC has actually been involved, just in kind of cobbling together transportation. And personally, I think it's something that could be funded by both the private and the public sectors, because it could benefit both. Do you all ever talk about transportation?
We talk about it in the context of wraparound services.
Okay,
So we have to go in.
And
Okay.
their transportation committee talks a lot about that kind of thing. And we need to perhaps see what they have put in there in the transportation.
I just think it's something that we need to, economic development and transportation overlap a lot.
Absolutely.
I just want to make that
You're right.
point.
So
You're right.
doesn't housing. If
Totally.
They can't find housing.
Right, that's why we.
And childcare.
4 weeks.
It's the whole
Yeah.
enchilada.
And then one little detail thing, I heard from a constituent that if you're registering for a co-op type corporation, as opposed to a different type, you actually have to come physically to Montpelier to fill out the forms. You can't do it online. So I need to obviously tell the agency that, but
Well,
I'm just,
The Secretary of
Share.
State.
or the secretary.
That's something we can talk about with Secretary of
All
State.
right,
And
well, I just want to let them know. Because
Oh, it's great.
I haven't heard that.
Okay, because co-ops are actually a really nice,
yeah,
Seveds in Brattleboro, we're looking at co-ops just as a way to keep businesses in the town, because that's a way to anchor them so they don't just get bought up and either closed or moved away. So that's all, that's it.
no, that's
Okay.
great. And when we have Secretary of State's office in on the one-stop portal, let's remember and ask that question. Randy, did you have something?
On the remote worker program, the timing limitations, was there a sunset on that? I just don't recall.
There was a date issue. That's what.
The date issue I saw in terms of starting date and so on, but the program and continued funding for it has not changed. Is that correct? Or is there any?
We're not recommending.
They're not recommending
additional
anything.
funding. I think there was a $4 million ask.
Okay, so you did not recommend any funding for it, and it's not, that's why we don't see anything here.
Correct.
Okay,
Just
understood.
that date is.
But we had,
We-
I think Joan asked for 4 million.
Okay.
Yeah, the governor's recognized.
One of the interesting things, there was an article, lots of articles about this. We've gotten great publicity. There's an article most recently, though, in Zillow,
Yes.
looking at, what was it, the nine cities throughout the country that have programs like this now. And they did the median rent and the average home, or the median home price in each of those areas. we were by far the highest in both. Just an interesting
I've heard
observation.
some other surveys like that that were
Yeah.
really are
Oh,
highest
So
increasing.
what that says, it's a much harder job to attract people.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what that says.
You can't buy a house and
You have no place to live.
you have no place to live.
We heard I heard the same thing, last fall, the Global Foundries, I heard the same thing from them. They're trying to get execs in, they come and, they work for a little bit and then they have to give it up because they can't find a place to live.
yeah, UVM is housing some of their staff in the dorms.
Yeah, and we heard from the hospital too earlier.
Yes.
I'm sure you did too. Well, thank you. This
You're
was terrific. Thank you.
Thanks. You need additional information, just let us know.
No, great. And so did you present this, just by the way it flowed, because David was beginning the story of the evolution of this bill. You voted it out, it went into the budget. Did you present it on the floor?
No.
Wow, so the whole thing was just,
Appropriations Committee.
you didn't even have to do this on the floor.
We found a way of doing our work without having to report. We found another committee to do our report.
See who else copies it.
Wow.
And it
We had,
passed.
so we
That's
better
good.
hurry because it's not copyrighted yet.
Good way to go. Well, thank you
Yeah, you're
both so
welcome.
much for this. This is just terrific. And thank you for your teeing up of this. And
Sure.
as a result, we have our witnesses. Scott has been working hard to line up our witnesses and
Good.
we're all ready to begin really working on this, which is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a grand day.
You too.
David, do you, now that we've had this fulsome teeing up from the originators of the bill, would you like to add anything? Or do you, because what will be interesting as we do our economic development discussions, there are asks that were not incorporated into this. The new, the relocated worker one is one. Would it make sense, David, given what we've just done with Stephanie and Mike, would it make sense to pivot a little bit to Sarah and Patrick? Or would you like to cover some more aspects of this?
That would be great. Let me mention two things.
Yeah, because I bet there was
about-
things that
About
were-
my table, not about the bills.
okay.
So, David Hall, Legislative Council, there on page 3,
Okay,
where it says adult education and literacy,
hold on, let's get to it. Yeah,
in the middle column, you can just sort of scribble through that question mark.
yeah, I asked them about
That
that.
was a note to myself that
Oh,
I forgot to delete the question mark because I needed to check against Sarah's excellent sheet, and it did, but I forgot to take the question mark out. And then you'll see on page 8, there are a few spots where there are differences in what Commerce had in its, sort of amalgamated proposal and what actually passed in the budget. So the original, for instance, the designated agencies piece was originally 4, it actually only passed at 3.
So the middle column wins.
The middle, yes, excellent.
Okay.
The middle column is what is actually in the budget bill.
So it won in the House.
You want to have.
So now we need to decide for ourselves, Wendy, what we want to have win in the Senate.
Okay.
And we need to advocate for every line in this because it's a big chunk of money.
So those highlights are the differences in those values. And the third and final thing I'll mention about the designated agencies, because I don't think it was quite clear in this conversation, is this pot of money is available to all of their full-time workforce, not just to master's level employees. That is a difference from the program you passed last year.
Right.
Which was ARPA funded and specific to master's level employees.
This is available to all
This is
designated.
for everyone and viewed as a recruitment and retention
Right.
tool across all positions within those agencies. All
Thank you.
right.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, before you
Okay.
ask, I just want to know, do we have a total of how many designated agency employees there are?
I don't, but I'm sure there's 10 other people who can tell you.
Yeah, okay. Great. Well,
Or at least 3.
So many questions. I'll just ask one, I think. In the discussion of providing the forgivable loans, did this committee or another
Which
committee?
forgivable loans, because there are a bunch.
I'm sorry,
here.
for the agencies, the Agency of Human Services, the designated agencies, I'm sorry, right?
Yeah, oh, on the same
So-
thing, okay.
So did they talk about increasing the salaries as an option and weigh the cost and benefits of each?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay.
I think that may be a Sarah and Patrick question. We have
Is
done,
that just,
No, we've had
Speaks here.
consistent testimony that you can make $2,000 to $5,000 more. So you get your master's and then you can go either the state of Vermont or the education system and make $2,000 to $5,000 day one.
we enable, and people snatch them from us because the DAs do not pay enough to keep them. And
so
so
maybe that's what we should be looking at.
we can do that additionally, but
They're level funded in the governor's budget.
there, and this is a special,
I can say.
do you have an update, Sarah?
Yeah, so the House budget included a 4% rate increase to the designated and specialized service agencies. So that equates to an increase in the rate that the Agency of Human Services pays to them for the services they deliver. What gets a little bit more challenging is that the Agency of Human Services can't tell them that they have to take that rate increase and then increase the salaries of their employees. So the House budget does include some language saying that it's the intent that the salaries of their employees will be raised, but it gets more complicated for the DA SSA system. But there is a 4% rate increase included in the House passed budget.
So that we have does the state have a contract with these agencies, right?
Pardon?
The state has a contract with these agencies?
Correct.
Yes,
And that contract doesn't provide that you can tell them that this money is for the employees?
Because we pay them a rate for the services they deliver.
So does that contract get amended?
It does every year. So, but it provides it, and I should say I'm Sarah Clark. with the
Yeah, and so
office.
why don't you two join us?
With some
David, if
background.
you have anything, did we miss anything in that? Very good, but they did skip around a little bit, so,
Whenever you want me to come back, I can.
okay.
Okay, not literally whenever.
We're taking you on your
You
word.
can put an ask.
Yeah.
Are those your papers?
Oh, yes, thank you.
That just keeping track here. Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, maybe you just need to get Stephanie and Mike to go and do these things for you. It's like, oh, they did the whole thing. Thanks, David. Okay, Sarah and Patrick, would you like to anchor us in this? And we have both your JFO fiscal note, which we have, and also we have Sarah's.
Yes.
I don't know what we call it, your spreadsheet, but it's a fabulous.
I call it a crosswalk because I wanted to make sure that
Crosswalk,
House
that's
members
what we
knew where the appropriations associated with H484, the Workforce Economic Development Bill, landed in the budget. So everybody knew where the money went.
Well, as you go
So
through,
but this is important. So the Ways and Means changed this also in addition to approach. So could you give us a history of sort of the money and how it's landed? Because we have a fiscal note from Ways and Means and from, or is it just one fiscal note?
well, we have two.
And I think Pat can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think the fiscal notes are gonna be slightly dated from the appropriations perspective
Okay.
in that, like what David was talking about, like, for example, the money that's flowing to the DAs and SSAs. The budget bill itself decreased that by $1 million. So the crosswalk document, this big table, I think really is the most up-to-date reflection
Right.
of the appropriations associated with this bill.
And then does this get updated?
Well, it's an interesting notion because it's now in the budget, right? So I don't know if we,
So that is I think we need, for our committee work, we need to keep it separate. And my understanding is that Jane, I need to clarify this with Jane, but I think they're hoping we will be weighing in on this so that they don't have to take the same amount of time. I mean, I think what they're doing is delegating to us as House Commerce delegated to all their committees to do that work. And we can sub-delegate to health and welfare if we want, to education. Colin just left, he came in. And, you know, so we can do that too, but at the moment, I believe it's being sub-delegated to us to review and make further recommendations. We of course have less time than the House had. Well, actually, they started it late, so anyway, we don't have very much time,
And
so.
on that note, I know Senate Appropriations is starting their markup work today, really, and so I think they are hoping to get your recommendations early next week. And I believe that Senator Kitchell will be reaching out.
If you see her before me, would you kind enough to?
Yeah.
No, I made a note based on your earlier comments as well, that we've got some fast moving trains
Yeah.
here.
She told the chairs meeting that the budget had to be
Yes.
out by the 28th, which means she needs to know all the money bills that are going into it about next week.
All right, I'm not
We
doing
got a
anything this
very
weekend.
short time frame this year for the second half.
Yeah, super short.
Yeah.
And you consider that the money chairs just had an extra week. So that's an extra week you're dealing with the first half.
Mm.
It's really
I don't know
short.
how we're gonna do all this. Anyway, we'll
So let's
figure
think
it out.
about that later.
Yeah, we'll figure it
Let's
out.
do this now.
Okay,
Do you want to walk through each of the appropriations, or maybe I can give you a kind of a high level? Happy
think
with
a
whatever
high
works
level-
for you.
I think a high level would be helpful, and committee, what else do you think? I think a high level would be helpful. I think one of the things I'd be interested in, because I know Randy and I are interested in it, is what the administration asked for and what actually made it into the budget. Because I think on some of these,
Yeah.
there's a pretty big differentiation, like the,
Yeah, and
That would be something that a chart would be helpful.
I have a chart, but I didn't bring it
Yeah,
for
no, I'm
today.
sorry, I didn't
But I
ask
can
you.
come back whenever works for the committee, because the other thing that's big picture important to understand, what's on this sheet in front of you reflects what was in the workforce bill. But there's actually other workforce investments and economic development investments in the budget
yes, which,
beyond that. And so I have a sheet that shows the full picture and then what was in the governor's recommend, so you can have that context.
so I've asked Sarah to bring back, if she would, we have the workforce pieces here.
Yep.
To bring back
Yep.
pulled out these specific economic development.
Yeah, so whenever works with committee, I can come back and we can.
One or
Run
two are
through that.
incorporated here.
Correct.
And just one other thing, it'd be helpful to know what things are intended to continue
Mhm.
and which are maybe, you know,
Yeah,
from federal one-time money.
that's great. And so let's hit on that. That's the next kind of big picture thing. And the other different from last year's bill is most of this is general fund dollars. So there's not any of the American Rescue Plan Act, State Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars, whereas last year there were a lot of those funds in
Okay.
play. And so for the most part, the appropriations that are included on this sheet are one-time in nature, with a few exceptions. And I'll point you to those exceptions now. And if you go to section 9 on the first page of this crosswalk, you'll see it says a note, it says B504 base. And so this is the $1.5 million of general fund dollars that's going to the Agency of Education for Adult Education and Literacy. That was built into the base in the House construct.
So base means recurring.
Base
Correct.
means recurring. Correct.
And the rest is viewed as one time.
Well, there's a
There's
few
another
other
base.
exceptions. If you
That
go
says
down to
base.
section
Yep.
18.
VSAC has got a base.
Yep, that's in B 605, that $1 million, which was actually in the governor's recommend for 24 in his base construct as well. And so that's being carried here. And then if you flip over to the back, and you go to section 25. These are also in the base, and this is the Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program. This is one of the programs that leverages federal Medicaid dollars. It makes it much more streamlined to build it into the base, and then it's an ongoing program that VSAC operates on behalf of the Vermont Department of Health. So that's the section 25. You can see there are multiple appropriations, all adding to a total of $3 million going for that program. And
Oh, so
then-
that's a total.
So those two are a subset of
It's
the
two.
3 million.
Correct. It has to do with how our
Actually,
Medicaid,
there's three, actually.
a
All under 25, all right.
Medicaid global commitment dollar is made up of both federal and state funds. And so it gets doubly appropriated, both the $3 million global commitment here, and then you'll see where the general fund, the 1.3 million, and the federal funds, the 1.7 million are also appropriated. And so-
Oh.
But it brings you to a total of $3 million going to this program.
So it's a blended.
It's a blended
It's a-
dollar, yep. And then the last one that is a base appropriation is in section 28A, which is a new program, the Vermont Dental Hygienist Forgivable Loan Incentive Program, which is just $100,000 of global commitment funds in total, has been built into the base. And so you'll see, similar to the Nursing Forgivable Loan Incentive Program, there's the general fund, the federal fund appropriations, and then the global commitment appropriation. And so those are built into the base. And the rest of them are one-time, primarily general fund dollars. So there is, in the way that the House set up the Rural Industry Development Fund, it is a transfer from the general fund into a newly created special fund. So that's captured here.
New funds. So the base total,
So can we, just before we leave that,
Yeah.
the Rural Industry Development Fund, it's a combination of things. This is the purchasing of properties that may be appropriate for this Canadian partnership, as I recall. Yes, that's a piece of it. Is it also, where are we putting our index? Do you remember earlier in the session, we talked about the rural index? And Doug Farnham came in and we had Wendy and I went and came up with special language in the BAA.
Yeah.
And then it went away.
Then it got passed in the BAA. How does that relate to any of this?
There are no additional funds beyond what was appropriated in the budget adjustment for that program in the House budget.
And that doesn't intersect at all with this rural.
Correct.
It
That is my
doesn't, so it
understanding.
doesn't, the index won't articulate necessarily where it would be appropriate for us to build these industrial areas that might attract Canadian companies.
Correct. I think it's for different purposes, though related.
Well,
I'm hearing you
it's
talk
related
about it.
here,
Yeah,
so that's what
Yeah.
I'm asking.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's part of our job is to try and connect, pull
So
all
again-
the things we're working on together so that we understand where they all are. So we,
If you-
okay,
Yes, if you look at the total general fund that's being appropriated here, it's about $38.6 million. Of that 38.6 million, it's roughly 2.8 million that's being appropriated into the base. Just to give you that context.
And base is, well, so you took out the
It'll be
global
back next
commitment.
year.
Yes, yeah. But the general fund associated with the global commitment dollars is
Oh, I
appropriated in
see.
the base. Yeah, it's the intricacies of Medicaid financing in Vermont, but
so that's,
So it's not shown here as a different thing, base, it's not shown.
it is not, no.
no, but we need to just know that.
Yeah, and the structure of the House budget, so all of the one-time appropriations, we created a B1101 section that has workforce and economic development. So you could see them all largely together in the bill. So when you review that, that language surrounding the appropriations, it's all primarily in B1101, with the exception of the items that are in the base. And that's why this crosswalk was really important, so people could follow the dollars and know where to look.
Okay, so we have two actual bills in front of us.
Yeah.
That we have the bill that has passed out of House Commerce that went to the House Appropriations.
Mhm.
And then we have this other bill that doesn't say B11 anywhere, 1101, but it does say F1. And it does have language that assumes it's in the budget.
I think that your problem with the F section is where the policy, if you will, associated with H484 was incorporated into the budget. What we should get you a copy of, in addition to the F sections you have in front of you, is the B1101 sections, which is where all of the one-time appropriations, where the language surrounding them are. They're on the spreadsheets, but you will probably want to review the language as well. And so we can work with Scott to make sure you have that B1101 in addition to the F section.
So that's not in this.
No, because that is the actual original draft. When we incorporate it into the budget, the structure changed at H484. But I think
This
right
you
here,
also have this,
I have this, yes.
and that will be what's in the budget.
that'll be what's
Okay.
in the budget for the policy. And then you also will want B1101. We'll get
Okay.
that for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Month.
exactly.
And Jane will probably come back to us with a box that we need to work within. So it probably won't be $40 million. And so we will get, do you have a sense of that? Or do we have to have that conversation?
I'll defer to Senator Kitchell.
Oh,
Do we ever project the benefits of things, you know, like this
Yes.
will,
that's our job in selling it to a pros.
right.
Yeah,
But in
what we
dollar
don't
amounts.
always do is track. We just gave X number of people, X number of thousands of dollars with the idea of developing Vermont's workforce.
Yeah.
5 years out,
How do we-
where are they? And why aren't they here? And that's what we need to be tracking, because if we're educating people to go work in Nevada, we're wasting our money.
And that is probably sadly true for every state that invested this in its people, because people move around for various and sometimes good reasons.
Well, then we
But-
need to know what that is and.
Right.
how it's-
I couldn't agree more, which is why this committee said enough already. We need an office that does all that, that tracks it, that keeps, that measures and unifies and coordinates all these efforts. And that is what,
Ultimately, you need
Yeah.
from that an analysis that says on return on investment over time, these kinds of investments have produced a higher return than those kinds of investments, and therefore, what should we be doing?
Right.
Yeah.
As predictive tool.
Yeah.
and being able to do that also is great. So that is what we're working towards.
And it has to be independent rather than the agencies that are promulgating the policies,
Yes.
because their reports are always positive.
Correct. And that is
They
why
do
we're,
wonderful things and they support the governor's budget and will continue to do wonderful
Right.
things.
so
That's regardless of who the governor is.
So that's why we have pushed to include this coordinating central spot for
Well,
all
one of the
work.
questions that should be asked, though, is should there be a separate coordinating body? Or should this be a function of the auditor's office, where performance audits is a task under a set of rules that are consistent nationally and that can be evaluated, as opposed to one more group that has an agenda to
And
follow?
they are included in our work. So
That
we're
would
very
I'd like
probably be
to
the
do that.
cheapest way to do it, is just give him
yeah, well,
X number of employees.
Well, and then he or she would know more about what's happening in general, which is knowledge that would come in handy down the
we can
line.
discuss that. We'll discuss it.
Yeah.
So, and Sarah, anything else?
I think
for us?
there's one other thing I want to make sure you understand, and the House members did reflect how there was $10,180,000 of ARPA state fiscal recovery funds that were kind of reallocated, if you were, away from the Department of Financial Regulation COVID paid leave program for other purposes. In addition, there was last year's bill included $1.5 million going to the Department of Labor for I think it's called a workforce expansion program. Regional workforce expansion program, $1.5 million. In section, I think it's F1 of the bill that you have in front of you, the House version takes that $1.5 million and essentially reallocates $1.2 million of that original appropriation for other purposes that are workforce related. Because I think that program,
Well, so there is almost no mention of DOL in this bill.
yeah, there's only a few items.
Very,
Correct.
very few. And DOL. So have they,
We're doing a workforce development without department of labor.
no, we need to, so I guess my concern here is this is a program they were, and Sarah Buxton was very committed to, so I'm a little concerned that we are,
So I raise it because I believe the Department of Labor has expressed concerns with the Senate Appropriations Committee about this reallocation of funding, because I think their intent is to continue to pursue the original purposes of the funding. And so, which I think the House understood, but there were delays. And so that's why they proposed to reallocate. But I think, you know, as you review this bill, you're likely to hear that concern from the Department of Labor, and a desire to restore that $1.2 million for the original purposes appropriated last year. And just wanted to make you aware of that.
and could you remind us, and because I can go find S11 and look it up, but I can't remember, what was the name of
Sure.
that again?
Yeah, so it's section 5A of S11 or Act 183 of last year. And it's
Right.
$1.5 million appropriation to the Department of Labor for regional workforce expansion.
That's right, and that was expanding their, not their one-stop portals, but their regional, their regional coordinated centers, I think. Anyway, we will get them in and discuss that. Sorry, it was called Regional Workforce.
Expansion.
Okay. Thanks.
Um,
Anything else that that was, the administration might have asked for that was, while we're on that?
Yeah, let me,
But I know the relocated workers, they asked for 4 million.
that's correct. Well, I'm just doing a quick look on my sheet, and I can come back if you have a quick few minutes at some point in time. I think
Okay.
that's the big one that's standing out. Some of them, like for example, the $3 million that's going to UVM for the Upskill Vermont Scholarship Program, that was part of the governor's recommend, and the House is maintaining that recommendation at $3 million.
But let me,
Are you more interested in things if they did something less than what was in the governor recommend?
sure, if you're
Okay,
able,
back
but
to the-
you're gonna come back to us with that.
No.
Aren't you
There's
coming?
things on top of, I guess.
That's a very short list.
Um,
So I think you're coming back to us with that.
Yeah, I'll come back, because then you can see it all at once on one sheet. I think that'll be easier for you to understand.
Great.
And then at some point in time, if you want to, I know you've got a lot on your plates right now, we did prepare kind of a status of the appropriations from last year's Act 183, S11.
Exactly.
To
This
understand.
is what Patrick and I spoke about.
Yes.
And
yes.
we weren't sure that how much we were going to be able to do by today. We have time? Would you like to chat about this? Because many of them feed into what we're looking at now when we talk about tracking things. This is part of why I asked Patrick to do this. Because it kind of goes into a vacuum. You know, we pass it out and then we don't necessarily always think about it again. So it's really important, particularly in this bill, where we're building on things we've invested in already. We need to know how they're doing, what's been spent, what. And so as a result, we are
Ask
now
and it
gathering.
appears. Thank you.
Ann Cummings, this is called Ask and You Shall Receive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Patrick and Sarah, do you want to?
Sure. So the approach we took, because as you know, there were many appropriations in Act 183 of last year that went to a variety of parts of state government. So to kind of get you an update quickly, we turned to our accounting system where we're able to run like what the original appropriation was and kind of what the year-to-date expenditures are and what is the remaining amount available of that appropriation. And so that's what you have in front of you, organized by section of the bill last year. And this is where you can.
And just for Wendy and Ann, if we want, and if you're interested in, you can go to our webpage, or maybe we could maybe, anyway, we have S11 on as passed.
Okay.
You can follow it.
So this is what we
did last year.
did last year. It's interesting, all the places where funding hasn't been expended.
Correct.
Well, there's some good reasons for it. So let's talk
go
about
through
it.
it.
And this is a real, like, just kind of, if you will, like a blind look at it. We just run from the accounting system, and this is where you may identify areas that you want to bring in the respective agencies and departments to talk to you about the status, because there's more going on than what will appear from the look here. And so maybe I'll just orient you
Well,
quickly.
remember, they got the money in July. And some programs took a while to set up.
Exactly, especially when they're ARPA, State Fiscal Recovery Fund programs. I think, as you're aware, the administration had a very rigorous process to ensure that programs were developed within the guidelines of eligibility criteria of those federal dollars. And so that's why a lot of the programs, really, it was in the, I'd say, late summer, early fall, where they were given the go-ahead to move forward. And so it's not surprising that a lot of money hasn't gone out the door for some of these programs. And we talked briefly earlier today about the lost revenue provision of ARPA, State Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars, and how when the administration, and I don't know if you want me to go into those weeds, because I can feel myself diving into the weeds, so you might not want me to do that. You might want me to just focus on what you're looking at right here.
Probably, yeah.
But there's good reasons
But
why
I
it
would
was
like to
slow.
know sometime.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a good conversation, but the long and short of it is we have some more flexibility in terms of how we deliver some of these programs, which got the go ahead to move forward.
Is that a result of Treasury feeling more comfortable with states doing this, or?
Treasury updated their guidance in terms of lost revenue provisions that caused the state of Vermont to take another look at things, which was favorable from a
Yeah.
flexibility
Towns
perspective.
basically got to use it like, revenue sharing.
Yeah.
Do you remember revenue sharing?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like that.
Oh, you got Ann smile.
Yeah. Everybody should smile at
And I
revenue
remember when it went away.
sharing. Me too.
I feel like I share our revenue on a daily basis at home.
Yeah, but anyway,
Anyway,
So
Okay.
quickly,
So, Sarah,
this sheet is organized by section of the bill from last year. And then you see a very brief description that I enhanced in some ways, but it came right from the accounting system, but it matches what it was appropriated for originally. Then I added a column for funds, whether it's general fund, American Rescue Plan Act, State Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars. There's also some global commitment in here and some education funds.
and
So
just
then-
for Ann and Wendy, as we go through this, lots of these are gonna look very familiar. So the first one, right off the bat,
Yeah.
is the UVM thing, which we've just been discussing.
Right.
So-
Yep, exactly. And
Great.
so that leads right into the budgeted amount. That's what was appropriated for these various programs. The expended amount is how many payments have been issued from the state's accounting system. So I do want to caveat that it can be misleading. Like, you take the first one, for example, and it appears that we've expended the $2.5 million, which we have. The state has issued a payment to UVM for $2.5 million. However, where the nuance comes is, well, how much has UVM obligated? And so that is going to be the case for a lot of the programs where you've seen the money go out the door in full. It's because it's going to either UVM, to VSAC, to VITA, to the Vermont Arts Council. When you see those payments have been made in full, it's because of how we make payments in our accounting system.
Got it.
And so it's more of a nuanced conversation to understand the status of those dollars being released from those organizations.
VSAC has the money, how many
Yeah.
scholarships VSAC has. the
Right,
money.
Exactly.
right.
So,
Exactly.
Does not know.
so another column would be great.
so another
In the
column,
future, not necessarily now.
another column would
Yeah.
be how many served.
Or,
And it
some
really, I
other
think, like
unit,
having
yeah.
Marilyn Cargill from VSAC come in, if you had time
She's
to understand.
coming in to talk with us about this.
Exactly, because she can
Right.
give you, because they've, as you said earlier, I think they've made a lot of progress in obligating and getting these funds to the
Yeah.
students, so. So then, with that caveat in mind, you've already noticed that not a lot of money has gone out the door on a cash basis. And so, really, you may want to look at it in kind of big buckets of spending. So the Agency of Human Services, for example, received a lot of funding for healthcare workforce programs, the designated specialized service agencies. And so you may want to bring them in to understand the status of those programs. Money may not have gone out the door, But I know that they have been working with the administration to stand up these programs to be able to enact them per your intentions. And so maybe I'll call your attention just down to section 53D, which is the relocated and remote worker program from last year. And you can see they have actually expended a little bit more than $1 million on that $3 million appropriation.
Which is interesting because I thought they had a waiting list. I mean, I have.
And it could be a timing thing too, because that's a lot of departments and agencies, if they're administering a grant program, there's a lot of upfront work that goes into administering that program and, you know, receiving proposals, applications, and then issuing the grant award. So there can be, even though money expended may not be as high as we would hope, they may have actually obligated more money behind the scenes. They just haven't issued payments yet.
Well, what is interesting is that money goes out the door much more efficiently. We don't know if the program's been fully set up with the organizations to which it's going, like anything going to be, you know, the Vermont State University's out the door.
Yeah, but Everyone Eats has ended. And
Correct.
it says
Yeah,
about $321,000
Yeah.
in the bank. So
But what's-
soon we've gone through the 321.
Yeah, it's probably just the timing of paying
Yeah.
invoices. Yeah, yeah.
But what's a little discouraging is to see, to go back to our designated agencies discussion and to see that none of that has gone out, and yet we're hoping for that to have hit, that was important rubber to hit the road. And that's very discouraging to me to see that none of those.
And I will caveat, and I don't know the specific circumstances of that, but I do know it was an ARPA State Fiscal Recovery Fund funded program. So there would have been the rigor of establishing the guidelines and getting permission from the agency of administration to move forward. So that inherently creates a little bit of delay, but I think it's important questions to ask, you know,
I think most
are
of
they
these
close?
agencies are so understaffed and so struggling. And as I was told the other day, they get paid per client because they're so understaffed. They have fewer clients, so they're getting less money, and it turns out to be a downward spiral until you can get more staff so they can handle more clients and get more money. And I don't know how you put a finger into that little whirlpool and stop it. And I know they're struggling, and people are struggling to get services. And when you're like that, and you have to find the time to also set up a new program by federal rules, which kept changing for some time, they may just not have the workforce to do it.
So the challenge we face is time. So we have Patrick and Sarah, I want to really thank you for this because we seldom do this kind of follow-up, and it really mattered to me to have the S11 follow-up as we were looking at what to invest going forward. So I'm really grateful. We need, I would love to have 4 weeks to do the deeper dive and hear from every one of these people about what we can expect. And we have to figure out how to, and we'll get a sense of that with some of the bigger, some of them, but it is, if Jane is wanting recommendations by the end of next week, we're really, that's really a tight challenge for us. So,
And I think it's earlier next week, I should just say.
yeah, well, we may not.
Jane doesn't
So we'll
understand everything.
prioritize.
Jane wants what Jane wants, and sadly,
We deliver what we can. She just told me I have $9 million I need to take out of the ed fund.
well, that's not
She's gonna
29 million,
explain
which,
it this morning.
so that's not 29 million,
Something-
which I thought it was going to be for those.
Oh, no,
universities.
that's, the universal meals is in. This has to do with the agreement with the NEA on the pensions and.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Got it.
there's 3 million in, but there's 9 million needs to be in the fund to offset the loss.
So is there anything that you think we should be flagged here that is of, you know, is there anything, I mean, other than the fact that I see all the ARPA, you're absolutely right. Every one of the pieces that has ARPA is not fully expended. Yeah.
Now, before we put money into more money into them. I'd like to know, is this roadblock because they're setting up and now they're set up and they can get that money? Or are we just putting more money?
Right, well, that's what we'll get with the testimony. Is there anything else for us that you want to either flag in the current proposal in H484 or in this?
I think maybe when you look at the current proposal and what was done last year, there are some programs that were created last year that didn't receive a new tranche of
Like
funding.
the Department of Labor.
Exactly. So you might
Department of
wanna,
Labor
like,
is a concern.
New
Yeah.
programs were created last year. Most of them did not receive additional funding, so you might want to just use that lens to look at things. Is there anything else, Pat?
And
you
as
would
much,
add?
yeah, and so for example, I'll just draw your attention to section 6,
Mhm.
the Department of Corrections, there was, we gave them
A
money,
reentry,
both.
pilot
We
reentry.
appropriated money not only for their workforce specifically, but also for the residents of the corrections
We
to
did, yep.
develop skills and talents and credentials of value.
Yep.
So that along with the culture, I mean, we're now being asked to help with the culture, which I understand completely because that's a retention issue, which is one of the things we're balancing in this committee.
Yeah.
So, so we need to, for me, that's, that's last year, this year, and both are problems.
Exactly. The only, and you're likely aware of this, but you'll see I made a note down on the totals at the bottom. The originally, the bill last year appropriated funds for the downtown and village center tax credit, but then in budget adjustment, we amended it because it was a tax credit. So it's actually not an appropriation, it's a tax credit, gets carried differently. And so if you were to like tie totals, it would be off by that because we amended that in budget adjustment. So.
Got it. Okay, great. Right. Any questions?
Just, can I follow up
Yeah.
on Senator Cummings, when we're talking about things that we need to be conscious of timing on, it would be helpful to know in maybe the crosswalk format, which of these areas have funds that we need to spend in a certain amount of time. Because then we obviously want to think twice before spending it on a program that hasn't even started. I mean, not to say that we won't decide that, but any sort of constraints on the funding would be really
Critical
helpful.
question, and 2026, I believe, is the date we have to have expended all the ARPA money.
Except for the stuff that went into revenue replacement. At least that's how it works for towns.
That's because the drawdown criteria for
That's
revenue
fine.
replacement is different, right? So you're correct in that the eligibility criteria makes like when you lost the revenue is when you actually earned the federal dollars. So you don't have to worry about the
Right.
program.
But you just
spend
use it
on
as any
government
dollars.
services.
It's
Correct.
not, it goes into
Yeah.
general funds. That's why I was saying it's like revenue sharing. But, so we have money that's not,
So in the current like construct in the FY24 budget, there is no ARPA state fiscal recovery fund dollars with those time constraints on this sheet right here. However, when you look
On
at the
which sheet?
status of on the sheet for the
The new sheet.
H484, correct.
We committed all the money.
That's right. So, but when you look at the sheet that Scott just handed out from last year's bill, there's a lot of American Rescue Plan Act state fiscal recovery fund dollars in there. And so that's where you have, state has until December 31st, 2024 to obligate. And then it
which we've
has,
done, right?
well,
Doesn't
so
this count as obligated if it was in last year's budget?
it does not. We've
Okay.
recently had some conversations about what does obligation mean from this
Okay.
perspective, and it varies. For example, obligation is not appropriation. And
Okay,
so,
that makes sense.
yeah. yeah,
Obligation is
Like
we're
having a contract or something.
exactly having a contract and people expect, individuals and or
You have to have
programs
those
expecting.
people that are getting the scholarship
exactly. Yep.
approved. You may not have sent the money to the school yet, but you have to have it, not just sitting there.
So is it like encumbered? Is it the same?
Yeah.
Would it be the same, like if something's encumbered?
So, and I don't, it's really a question we've been having conversations with Deputy Secretary Farnham about because
Yeah.
it's very nuanced. It came up on the House side because of one of the ways that they use the freed up ARPA State Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars was to, for the state colleges, for some of their one-time bridge funding. And so there was some concerns about making sure that they were able to obligate and spend it in the time. In the case of the state colleges, the obligation actually does happen pretty quickly, because when the state makes the payment to the state colleges, that's the obligation. It gets more tricky when it's, let's say, money at the Agency of Human Services, it's going out into grants to either providers or employees. The obligation is a little bit more tricky. So it's definitely a deeper conversation, and funds have to be spent by December 31st of 2026. So I feel like for this summer, there's going to be a lot of work happening in the Joint Fiscal Office, really understanding the obligation versus expended, so that we can make decisions next session if we need to do something different.
Right.
I'd like to draw our attention to 3 of these, one of which does have some clawback money, which is lines 51 through lines 53 C1. Line 51A, which is the DFR money that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That was a real challenge for them, and I would say that program's really not happened. And so we are, 5 million has been expended in some capacity. And 10 million is being clawed back.
It is, and thank you for pointing that out. That's highlighted as in yellow, as well as the number 1.5 million up above, because that's where the House is proposing to change those appropriations. So that on the line 51A, that 15,180,000 is actually going in the House proposal would just be 5 million.
Right.
Yeah.
The 50.
So, and then I just wanted to point out that VITA, that these partners with the state, where the ARPA money fit Treasury's rules very well. Those lines 53, B1 and B2 out the door. That is so exciting, because VITA was the leftover really hurting COVID impacted businesses. That those all went out the door, and that's just only recently finished being obligated. And right, Patrick, because it wasn't at the beginning of session, Cassie hadn't finished that, and so that's exciting. That's $19 million of help to companies that were still very COVID hurting.
Circus Circus was very grateful because they could not perform for 2 summers, I think. I know one, there was nothing, and then I think they did a few outdoor things.
That's great. So I'm really excited that that's happened. And then the 9 million for the Creative Economy grants. Boy, the Arts Council has done a fabulous job. Karen did a great job getting those getting that grant program up, running, and out the door. It was terrific. But not some of these are larger, more behemoth type organizations that have to be moved, and for the nimble, smaller, self-managing ones, it's interesting to see how quickly that money got and how effectively it's now into the world that needs it. So what is discouraging is to see how much money isn't into the pockets of the people who need it.
Douglas Farnham was in House Appropriations last week talking about this kind of general issue related to State Fiscal Recovery Fund dollars. I do think it's updated quarterly. They have to report to the Treasury on a quarterly basis. So they're in the process of completing that for the quarter ending March 31st. And so I do think in a couple of weeks, we may have some better information in terms of getting money out the door.
And I think we have better information on the community recovery and revitalization grants. I feel like some of those are out the door.
Well, so in addition to this 10 million, there's also a $30 million.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's not captured on here because it wasn't appropriated in Act 183, but I think you're right. Some more money has gone out the door than what is shown here.
Yeah.
And so when you say change an appropriation, that's happened in the past? And maybe that's a question I should learn about elsewhere.
Well, if you look at the language sections from the big
But like
bill,
a past,
it did pass and then.
no, but I mean, if, can you really change an appropriation that folks did
You can,
from
yes.
a previous year? You
Yes.
don't just say transfer the money somewhere?
You can, and there's language, if you look at
Wow.
F1 and F2, you'll see where the appropriations are being changed.
How far back can you go?
Well, I mean, I don't know, as long as there's a balance left in appropriation.
And they do a true up every year too, right? To see what hasn't been expended. The ed fund has benefited more than once because the special ed appropriation didn't get used, and so it comes back in.
Which is hard to believe, given what we've gone through. Anyway.
This was a couple years
Okay.
ago.
Oh, yeah, this was,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Now we need.
anything else, Patrick? You've been silent. Anything else to add?
So add to the fiscal office, just quickly going back to the Recovery and Revitalization Grant Program, ACCD did publish a report based on their activity.
Which we have on our website.
Yep, based on their activity up to February 1st. And so they go through the process of round one funding, review, actually send them like, so they have gotten see here 83 project applications and are recommending 31 of them to the review team. With a proposed award amount of almost $10 million, which, as you recall, this is to support a fraction of project funding, which they expect to support $153 million of project funding with that nearly $10 million in grants.
So that's leveraging a
That are
lot more.
to the review team, so they're still, as of this report, we're being sent there. So
That's where it
you know,
gets
the
slow.
plumbing is working.
Yeah. Just
Very important.
getting the plumber takes time.
Very important that the plumbing is working. We applaud that.
But it, I mean, you have to get
Good at some
that
point.
aren't used to writing these grants and get them put it, developed as a project and put together. And if they're towns, democracy runs very slow.
Yeah.
Great. I think this is terrific. And Randy, anything else? Are we, okay? I think we are, if committee could just stick, Sarah and Pat, thank you very much. This was, I have to say, I'm really thrilled with this S11 update because, yeah, no, it's so important for us to, and so it will help us inform our questions for the people who come and testify on H484. So thank you. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add? Here, you've been here patiently.
You're doing great. Thank you.
We love to
Would
know
you
we're doing.
say otherwise?
We're taking.
We are strictly monitored.
We are strictly honest. So
I learned a lot.
Oh,
Thank you.
this is exciting
allowing
work. This is, I think, I love this work. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're turned to it and I'm glad the House started it because they had a little more time than we did on, just given where we got hijacked. Anybody have an opportunity over the Easter, Ramadan, Seder, Passover weekend to call your appointees? Because no, okay.
I saw Scott sent them.
Yeah, and I got a printout.
That was a start. That was, you know what? That was
I
the
had
start.
10 people. I finally found out they were coming for brunch.
Oh, well, this is it.
But I didn't know that on Friday.
Oh, it's a good thing you can pivot. So
I did
Randy,
bring a
did you
good
have a
portion
chance
of
to call
the
anybody? Okay, Keisha, did you have a chance to, and are you wanting to do all the people that are identified on your list? Is Keisha with us? Don't think so. Okay, we can follow up with a question.
She
And see where-
may have a thermometer stuck in her mouth.
Yeah, she may. So I think if we can get those calls done in the next, if we can do them on Friday, we don't
You
need
guys
to.
want to do that, I know.
The only people who have to be reported
All I
on the
need is
floor.
Arcasia's, the commissioners,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly, and I don't know if
She
Keisha's-
commissions, and that would be something.
And she's not gonna be able, I know for a fact, she's not gonna be able to do that on Friday. So,
Probably not.
what?
I said probably not.
Well, unless little baby Ron Hinsdale wants to report it for her. Because I believe it may be, have a baby by then. So I am gonna. Oh, she's hooked up to a machine, well, that's not good. I mean, it may be good, but it's not. So I'm gonna try and make my 3 phone calls. And if Keisha can hear us, Keisha, if you need some help on this, I'm happy to help. And Scott, if we could, to that end, from the people that we have to report on the floor, Knight, Harrington, and Curley, if we could get their bios, and get their assistants to send us their bios, not their CVs, but their bios. A short bio, that would be helpful, because then we can just
Full of
report them on the
really-
floor. And then I could do it if Keisha can.
Yeah.
I give you one, we'll share.
Got a bio. We just have to vote.
Correct.
But if we
So
get
I've
a
left,
bio, we can sit and.
so we have left time on Friday morning to vote for
Well,
the,
can we, I usually have them in. Commissioners. for-
Oh, commissioners,
For the
okay.
committee, so the committee,
that is a great idea, and I don't know if we quite, I
I
don't,
don't have as many as you do.
Well, Wendy Knight's coming in anyway,
Wendy will
Yeah,
be here, and we
usually
could
they're here
ask her
so can we
quickly to
just
touch
have
on
her
that. Good
stay
point.
5 minutes? and-
We
You
could,
want to continue?
yeah, Wendy, it looks like we may have more time on Wednesday with Wendy than we thought. How are we doing on our changing the time?
10 to 11, I kept 11 to 12, I moved next week, 11 to 12 is now an hour free.
Okay, not free, but we're gonna get sports betting, hopefully we'll get, and,
Everybody Tucker for that.
okay, great. So, to
If you
Ann's
sports
point,
betting, that'll end up a good portion of my emails.
to Ann's, well, I think we need to
Settle
do
the state
that
colleges.
free to do sports betting. But we could invite, to
They're
Ann's
just using-
point, we'll have Wendy in from a lot of that morning. We could on Wednesday or Thursday have Lindsay Curley and Michael Harrington. I don't think we have a labor, I don't think he's in. I don't think he's in. So the other piece of scheduling that, given what we may be hearing from our friend Senator Kitchell, you and I may need to move some things around.
So you just said you can come in for 5 minutes.
Could you come in 5 minutes now?
Senator Mazza.
Well, Mazza wasn't here last time I checked.
Oh, that's
So-
not good. I can't remember Mazza,
What do you mean not here?
Not here today.
not here.
He had
today.
not
okay.
So
arrived,
far.
he had not arrived by the floor time.
That's not good.
No, and I
don't think
haven't
he
had a
meant
chance to
the
call.
day Dolly had a stroke.
Yeah. Was not good.
I can try to see.
Always.
if you know.
Yeah, that would be great. See, if she could come in now and give us our marching orders in terms of time frame, that would be helpful. And we could also do it first thing tomorrow morning. Maybe after China. So we could have a choice. If she can't come now, you know what? It's pretty last minute. What do you think? Are you guys willing to stick for 5 minutes?
No, I have a 12.
Oh, you have a 12 o'clock. We have a 12:15.
We have a 12:15.
So you know what? Let's
Unfortunately, I
figure out a
can't
better
I
time
need to eat
tomorrow.
lunch.
And
I
because,
wanna have some almonds. Where are you guys getting those little things? Those,
Oh.
no, those little
These-
packages.
Well, they were in my committee room
Oh.
and transportation.
Thank
I
you.
could see 'em.